Aloha no, I'm Leslie Wilcox of PBS Hawaii. Welcome to another Long Story Short. Today we get to meet a man who wears many hats. Visionary farmer, Vietnam veteran, college graduate, an innovative small business owner who's found a way to generate electricity on his property and offers his employees profit sharing, and a community activist who initiated an adopt-a-class program at a local public school. Hawaii Island grower Richard Ha.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, produced with Sony Technology, is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in HD. High definition, it's in Sony's DNA.
Farmers, in order to be successful, need to have an understanding of complex issues, including diversification, sustainability, resource management, and economic cycles. On Hawaii Island, Hamakua's Richard Ha tracks the worldwide price of oil, advocates native Hawaiian practices of ahupua'a, and writes a blog on his website. Interested in meeting him? So was I. Turns out he's a farmer partly because his father was. His father only became a farmer when he received 40 acres of farmland outside Hilo through the GI Bill.
So what kind of farming did he do to start off with?
Well, I remember him growing tomatoes and cucumbers, and smoky time we would go pick the tomatoes and have tomato fights.
So much for that harvest.
Yeah.
And had he been trained in farming, or was he picking it up as he went?
No, he didn't have any training in farming. It was pretty much, back then I think a lot of people understood about farming and gardening, and it was kind of second nature. It wasn't difficult to do.
They were closer to the elements, weren't they? They noticed the cause and effect of the winds and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, Tutu folks were taro farmers down at Maku on the ocean. But what I remembered about that time was that they had few pigs. But the big deal about it wasn't that they had few pigs in the pen. There was a stone wall around the property, and they'd leave the gate open. And what would happen is the wild pigs would come in. So
And they'd catch them?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you saw your dad farming and you were playing with tomatoes, did you think, I want to grow up and be a farmer?
No. Actually, what happened was I ended up wanting to go into business or into having some kind of organization to be in charge of. And the reason that happened was because Dad used to tell stories when I was about 10 years old. We had this kitchen table that was like a picnic table, bench and everything. And he would tell stories about impossible situations, a business situation, or he had all kinds of different situations. And he would come down he came up against a stone wall, there's no way to figure it out, and he'd pound the table, and the dishes would all fly. He would say, boom, not no can. I remember that pretty clearly.
Not no can.
Yeah.
It's about problem solving and the will to overcome the problem.
Yeah, it was just a given that you just don't come up to a problem and look at it and say, oh, that's it. There was always a way around it.
Was it hard working the farm in those days? Was that a tough way to make a living?
The chicken farm was really tough, yeah. And the reason for it is because he had too many chickens for the Big Island and not enough volume to supply Oahu. So he was caught in between there. But yeah, it was kind of tough.
So would you say you were middle class, poor?
Oh, I thought later on I found out we were real poor. But at the time, you don't have a concept of being poor. But yeah, later on I found out we were actually pretty poor. I think you're pretty poor if your mom is making pancakes, and then you can't, I don't know which one is baking powder that would make it rise and get fluffy. We didn't have that.
Were you conscious that you didn't have what you needed?
Not really, except for maybe Christmas time. And at Christmas time, my aunts from Oahu would send us toys, and that was something you look forward to all year long. And it may be just little plastic soldiers. So we didn't have very many Christmas presents, but that was extremely, extremely valuable to us small kids.
Well, normally, what did you use as toys?
I'd make your own.
Like what?
Make sugarcane rockets, cut the sugarcane leaf, and peel it back a little bit, and fly them as far as you can fly them. Make swords out of, hedge and fight sword. All kinds of stuff like
And that was
slingshots.
good fun, right?
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if anybody's any happier having anything more than that, actually.
In Hawaii, we're familiar with the saying, if can, if no can, no can. Richard Hawes' father taught him not no can. And Richard embraces that can do and make do attitude. Although he was raised on a farm, Richard didn't go into farming until much later. Straight out of high school, he went to college to study business.
Well, actually, I didn't know what I was going to do exactly. I knew kind of that I'd like to get into business, and so if I was going to college, it would be good to major in business. So I went to college, and I spent 2 years, and I finally flunked out. Just too much things to do, people to see, stuff like that. And it was at the time when if you flunked out of school, you would get drafted and go to Vietnam.
You flunked out?
Yeah, flunked out and got drafted, went to Vietnam. But then, I had the opportunity to apply for officers candidate school, which I took. And I eventually became an officer. Yeah. So I became an officer and and then you have to really get serious because, end up in Vietnam, in a situation where it's life and death. And what I learned in Vietnam was really important to me in later life. I was an artillery officer attached to an infantry unit. And the rule was, and it didn't have to be spoken, leaving someone behind is not an option, not even a consideration. It's we all come out or nobody comes out, kind of like that. It was a good lesson.
Did you ever have to take a lot of risk in order to make that happen?
Some, more than you'd like to, but it's just something you have to do. It's not, you don't even weigh it. Yeah.
And when you were in Vietnam, were you concerned about what you were hearing from the U.S. about the objection to the war and the protests against the war?
No, actually, I looked upon the thing as a patriotic thing to do and just assuming everybody was doing the right thing. And so my main concern was the people we were, responsible for, and we had to take care of each other. And beyond that, I didn't go there.
In a sense, well, you were leading a group meant for business, life and death business.
Kind of, yeah, when you think about that, yeah, yeah.
Did you have any close calls personally?
Actually, yeah, and probably because of what Pop taught me, the situation was like this. We were in a rice paddy, and we're coming to this village, and then we got incoming sniper fire. So we all ran into a depression, and I looked around and said, holy smokes, this is not a place to be. So I grabbed the radio operator and said, let's go. So we jumped up and ran about 50 feet or so, and bullets flying and everything like that. And a few seconds after that, a grenade landed just where we left. But it was kind of like, Pop taught us a lot of lessons, and it had to do with survival. It's do what you got to do and plan for the future, and if make decisions, you got to do it now, kind of thing like that.
And not no can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you came back alive from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then at that time, I had some time to grow up. There was six years in the military as an Army officer. Things are pretty serious. It gave me a lot of time to think about going back to school. And going back to school, I knew I wanted to go into business, but this time I figured I'm going to major in accounting because accounting will help me keep score. And then that's what I did. And it worked out pretty good.
You liked it?
I like keeping score. I never did work in accounting.
You did, but you liked learning it.
Yeah.
Well, what were you going to do with your accounting degree?
Actually, I didn't really know. I just knew that I had an accounting degree, and if there's anything came up, I was going to do it. But it just so happened Pop asked me to come back and run his chicken farm. So I said, okay, well, I don't have anything planned. I'll do that. So I came back, helped him run the poultry farm, and in the course of that, met the supermarket people, learned how marketing and that kind of stuff worked. And
you learned from the ground up on that end, right?
yeah. Didn't have, I mean, we raised chickens when we were little, but the business end of it was different, and with an accounting degree, it helped me to analyze and so what happened was we had 40 acres and 25 of it was in the chicken farm, so we had some extra land. And so we needed to find out what could we do with no more money, because I only had a $300 credit card. Back when it was hard to get a $300 credit card. So we started doing some research and found out that there was about 6 million pounds of Chiquita bananas being imported into Hawaii. So I said, oh man, if we could get into that, we should be able to do okay. So we started trading chicken manure for banana keiki and started 2 acres. But we didn't have a tractor, we didn't have anything, just had my Toyota Land Cruiser. So we'd make lines by driving down, knocking the California grass down, get a sickle, cut a hole, get an OO and shovels, and planted bananas. That's how we started.
Wow, hoeing by Land Cruiser. Was that a success the first time out?
Well, when you only got 2 acres and you're actually working in the chicken farm, there's not that much risk. It was all labor. So it wasn't too much risk. But what it did was it helped me learn.
At what point did you have your own farm?
Well, yeah, that was my dad's farm, and we made it into a four-way corporation with my brothers. And then from there, I went to Kapoho to lease some land over there, and that's when it started, maybe 2 years after we started the first banana farm. And then when the sugar plantation started closing down, we were able to move closer into Hilo at Keao. So we moved our farm there, so there was a little bit more soil. And the time we got into big business was, I had an Opel station wagon. It's a small little thing, maybe you can hold 5 people. And as long as our employees were only 5, that was fine. But as soon as we went to 7 and 8, we went into big business because it was communication. People were thinking, that they weren't getting the right information because they weren't in the car with me. And then we started realizing, you want to be good to everybody, you want to be liked and all that, but the best you can do is be fair. And once I realized that, then that was pretty important.
And then you got 2 vehicles.
You got 2 vehicles, and you got more workers and more land. At Keao, we ended up with expanding to 300 acres, and by then we became the largest banana farm in the state. Yeah, but we were still basically local boys.
Local boy farmer Richard Ha does more than farm. He's also a blogger operating a website he updates several times a week. He recently gave the commencement address at a local college, and he orchestrated a community effort to help students at Keaukaha Elementary School in Hilo. The public school was under federal oversight for failing to meet educational benchmarks until a new principal, Lehua Vincent, stepped in and invited community support.
Keaukaha Elementary School, a Hawaiian homelands community, and a school that was in the academic basement for 20 years. You adopted a class there.
Yeah, what happened was I volunteered to be on this 30-meter telescope subcommittee of the Hawaii Island Economic Development Board. And so when you talk about telescopes, you automatically talk about the culture. Mauna Kea, you need to talk about the culture. If you talk about the culture, and you end up at Keaukaha. It's a 75-year-old Hawaiian homes community. And so that's where I ended up. Yeah, so I went over there, talked to Kumu Lehua about telescopes, and had to learn a lot about the culture. I didn't know as much as I do now. I was mostly worried about farming. But the more I got into it, the more I needed to learn. But so talking to Kumu Lehua, I invited them to come to our farm to just an excursion. And in the course of the discussion, I asked him, where else you folks go on excursion? He says, we don't go on excursions. You don't go, how come? Too much money, $300 for the bus. We cannot afford that. So what we do is we take walking excursions around the school, in the neighborhood. I couldn't believe it. I thought every kid went on excursion, but they didn't. And then what is ironic was, here I am on the 30-meter telescope subcommittee, and you're standing in Kilkaha, you look at the mountain, there's hundreds of millions of dollars of investment out there. You look back at the school and the community, you say, there's nothing here of tangible relationship to that. And but whatever the case, we decided this no can. We had to do something. So the simplest thing that came to mind was the adopt a child thing.
This is a homelands community that really is right in Hilo, right a walk away from Ken's House of Pancakes. But they had been kind of shut out. I mean, they felt like they didn't have anything going for them, and the school was in disarray for many years.
Yeah. But Kumu Lehua is a special guy. What he did was he brought the community together and tied the community and the school together, and then the relationship with the business, us, the business community, made the community and the kids see the bigger world. They're part of a bigger thing now. We've
talked with Kumu Lehua at PBS Hawaii, and we know he looks at everything through a prism of pono. What's not who's right, but what is the right thing to do at this time?
Yeah, and he's real consistent that way, and it's a wonderful thing.
Do you hear young people say, "I want to be a farmer"?
More and more nowadays, because I think a lot of people are starting to see that this is a serious business. We're about feeding people. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can really identify with hunger and with the need for food. You're a Hawaiian who knows the issues. The community has been split over the use of the mountain, which is considered a sacred mountain for astronomy purposes. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think with the oil crisis coming up now, the world has changed. Several years ago, when the oil our supply prices started going up, and we didn't really know what was going on. But after researching it a little bit, we found out it was related to oil prices. As the oil prices went up, fertilizer, chemical, everything else went up. And so we started looking around, now. And I went to the peak oil conference in Houston, and we found out that the world oil supply is not going to be able to keep up with the world demand. And if you think about that a while, then you realize all these different things will follow. Planes are going to have a hard time flying, people are going to have less discretionary income, fertilizer costs are going up, and all these different things. So we needed to kind of change the way we're doing business. And we actually had thought about making our own electricity, but when I came back, it was like, boy, we got to get going soon. No more choice.
Well, how are you going to make your own electricity?
Well, we have a flume that runs through our property, and it was for the plantation.
Yeah, and for those who weren't around during the plantation days, it's a water line.
Yeah, and what they do is they take water from the stream and just divert it to where they want it to go. And in a lot of cases, it was to throw the sugarcane in and run it down to the mill. So it was one of those kind of flumes that we have. And it just was sitting there. So we got a consultant, and sure enough, we could put in an 18-inch pipe about this big, and we could generate enough electricity to power 15 40-foot reefer Matson containers. So that's quite a bit, which turns out to be about 25% more than we use. And our electricity bill now is $15,000 a month. So we're going to be able to pay for all that electricity and still have 25% extra.
What are you going to do with that?
Well, we've got all kinds of plans. We're thinking that with the excess electricity, we can do a plug-in thing so that our workers could plug in their hybrid cars in the future as a benefit for working for the company. That was the first thing we thought of. Another thing is, because fertilizer prices are going up, we want to take the waste bananas, feed it to fish, use the fish waste, run it through a biofilter, convert it to fertilizer, fertilize the plants, and pump it back up with free electricity. And then even you could fool the plants to thinking it's winter when it's summer.
Wow. And so pretty soon you won't have a $15,000 a month electricity bill?
Yeah,
that's on the way?
That's true. And now all the farmers and everywhere on the island in the state faces the same situation, rising fuel and fertilizer costs. So, and everybody's talking about food security. Now, how do we do that? And the answer is, if the farmer can make money, the farmer will farm. So it doesn't get much more complex than that. So in an effort to figure out ways to help farmers make money, we went, with the help of the Department of Ag and the legislators and a bunch of people, we pushed through legislation so that farmers could get cheap loans, low interest, long-term loans for renewable energy projects.
And does that mean your problems are over? Your challenges are
No. It's, we know that one day the boat not going to come. Like, you talk to a lot of the Hawaiian people, it's not it's a given that sooner or later there will be supply disruptions.
Right, and
so,
what is the stat I heard that because we depend so much on imported food, if we don't get a barge in for 10 days, we'll be virtually out.
Yeah, we're talking about probably 7 days worth of food supplies. But if there was a hint of something disrupting the supply, people would just go down and clean the stores out in 2 days, my thought. So it's a tough place to be. So what we need to do is we need to have more farmers. We need to support farmers more. We need to have more food security. So that's really what we're reaching for. Now the objective is to feed people. So now we have to have a calorie. We have to have the concern about what is the mix of calories. So that's why we're thinking of doing aquaculture for protein and leasing land to other farmers so they can do what they're good at and we do what we're good at. We all bring everything down to the farmers market and people won't have to travel as far.
Are you confident that local people will buy local produce even if it's more expensive?
Well, it's really what we need to do to support our local farmers, because to be food secure, farmers got to make money. And come the time when we feel like this is really a serious situation, it'll happen. I'm confident it will.
You think do you think we'll be motivated to do the right thing, go in this direction without first a disaster? Usually we learn from disaster. Usually we're not really good about looking ahead and saying, let's prevent the disaster.
Actually, I'm pretty optimistic that it'll start happening. As a matter of fact, I see it happening already. So it's just going to be a matter of time. Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic.
Will Rogers used to say the farmer has to be an optimist or he wouldn't still be a farmer. Hawaii Island's Richard Ha adds social advocacy to his optimism as he looks toward Hawaii's future.
Sustainability means basically surviving for the long run. And how we look at it is how it affects our workers, our community, and the environment. So our workers, I just mentioned a little bit about, every Thursday we have, our workers can come and just pick up all the different things we grow, bananas and tomatoes and whatever, as much as they need for their family. And we have profit sharing, although it's been tough the last few years. We have profit sharing, and we want to look, toward whatever we can do to help them with the food side of it, because it's hard for us to raise our workers' salaries because we can't raise the price. Everybody's having a hard time. So we have to figure out other ways to help our workers.
Do these look like particularly bad times for you? I know that tourism is down, and everybody's talking about soft economy. How's it affecting you? Farmers have had it rough lately anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky, but we always plan 5-10 years out. We're always looking for where we need to be in the future, and we already know that this is happening, it's going to get worse, so we're already moving in that direction. So I think we're going to be okay.
What do you see yourself doing in 10 years?
It's hard to say what it'll be, but I'm pretty sure it'll be something what I can't imagine now, because we always end up doing something that's new and different. Yeah, so I expect that it'll be something new and different, but it'll be something for sure.
And it'll be in farming?
I can't even say that. I don't want to just say one particular thing, but it really has to do with where our society is going, what our circumstance will be, and it has a lot to do with alternate energy, I think.
How that's going to shape our future?
Yeah.
Well, like it or not, the future's on its way, and the best we can do is prepare for it, help to shape it. Mahalo to Richard Ha of Hamakua Springs Country Farms for growing our awareness of what the future holds and for showing us what he's doing to get ready for it. Mahalo to you for joining me for this long story short. I'm Leslie Wilcox of PBS Hawaii, looking forward to seeing you in the future. Ahui ho kako.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is produced in HD by PBS Hawaii with Sony technology. High definition, it's in Sony's DNA.
I read a review of your fruit that said that if you've gotten used to these cardboard tasting tomatoes that you buy in some places, you gotta taste Richard Ha's tomatoes because they're just full and juicy. And is that true?
Yeah, it is.
I suspect you were going to say that.
And there is a reason for it. We actually test the fruit every week for sweetness because it's about value to the customers. And so what we try to do, if you think about value, really it's about taste for tomatoes. So that's what we do. We spend a lot of time monitoring that. So, yeah.